Hello and welcome to On the Corner, the official podcast of PitcherList.com. I'm your host, Eric Samulski, joined in a new look, a new room, a new setup by Nick Pollock. Nick, we're in the middle of a move right now, but you're adjusting. It's coming into focus.
Well, this is the temp. This is still the temp for one more week. We have painters, we have construction, all this stuff. And yeah, new studio is going to look a little different next week. But yeah, it's a time of change, Eric.
It is. It is a time of change. What a segue.
You were in Cleveland. Not Cleveland.
I was.
But you were with Cleveland camp.
I was in Arizona with the Guardians for 4 days.
Man.
First of all, you know what the weather's been like here in New York. Being in the 80-degree weather in Arizona was great.
Yeah, sure.
Really, really happy, that they gave me that opportunity. I encourage everybody to go to NBC Sports, check out my content. You can also just Google Eric Samulski NBC Sports, and that will take you directly to my content page.
Nice.
Which is the easiest way to find just like all of the Guardian stuff I did. I spoke with Gavin Williams about obviously recovering from last year's injury and about the kind of changes we've seen to his fastball, the cutter from last year, which we found out wasn't actually a cutter, but was the slider. And it just wound up being a pitch that he was throwing harder because he just was really struggling after coming back from the elbow injury with like grip and release, but he liked it. And so he plans to keep the harder cutter, but also get his older slider. Talked to Tanner Bybee about bringing in a two-seamer and also just some changes he's making with location. I talked to Carl Willis, the Guardians pitching coach, just about being a pitching coach for, he's been in 42 major league spring trainings as a player and a coach.
Oh my gosh.
So just talked with him about that. And then also, some of the changes they've made to Luis L. Ortiz, Slade Ciccone, those new guys. Talked to Shane Bieber about his recovery. And it was really great to hear from him. Like, we're like, hey, you were throwing the cutter like upstairs a lot more last year. Was that like a plan? And he was like, no, I just worked really hard in the off season to recover from this injury and my velocity was up. And so I just kind of ran with it when everything was up. Like he didn't plan to use his four-seamer more, but his four-seamer was good and the velo was up. And so he used it more and he used the cutter and, the changeup was a grip change. He stopped trying to like cut off velocity with the changeup and just say, I just throw things hard and that's how I'm just going to do it. So all of that was super interesting. And then I went to Rangers camp for a day and watched Jacob deGrom throw live BP to Jock Peterson and some other hitters. And I can just tell you with my own eyes, deGrom looks really, really good, people. He looks really good.
I think he's getting vastly underrated. It's like, I don't know. He's deGrom. He's just going to go out there and destroy.
And that's actually, you know what? We can segue because Nick and I are talking about starting pitchers we love from early spring training. And so I'll just talk about deGrom because, I have not drafted him anywhere yet because I've been doing draft and hold formats. And we've talked about a lot that like draft and hold formats, innings are really important and that kind of security and whatnot. And also you and I are both proponents of like waiting on drafting starting pitching. And so, maybe getting a guy we rank inside the top 7 or 8 is not as feasible as it might be if your strategy is to take a starter. But look, deGrom had surgery to repair the issue. His arm is fully healthy. I just don't know why we assume the arm is going to like fall off after 80 innings. He has had surgery to address the issue. That was not something that had happened in the past. There were other injuries that had also limited him. You texted me the other day with the list of injuries. It's really not that many injuries that he's had. It's just that they've accumulated a lot of time on the IL. We saw him pitch at the end of last year. He looked really good. He looks really good right now. I saw with my eyes. He looks very good right now. And so that gave me an even more confidence in him. And then we just got this report yesterday that I messaged to you. Kennedy Landry, who covers the Rangers, tweeted out that basically the Rangers are not starting deGrom as their like number 1 or 2 starter. He's going to start, I believe, as their SP4. And the idea for that was looking at the schedule, saying, okay, how can we get him extra days of rest without having to worry about like, oh, we're going to have him skip this start and do that. So given the way the schedule plays out, by making him their SP4, he gets extra off days early in the season. And what we love about that from a fantasy perspective is he's not having starts skipped. He has a spot in the rotation.
Yep.
That's his spot in the rotation. He is going to make that start whenever that spot comes up. It's just that the Rangers have more off days early in the year, which is going to allow him to kind of slow play the innings at the start of the season. I just think, especially in IL formats, like, we should be drafting deGrom. He looks great. He is great. He's going to pitch a large number of innings this year. And I think we just, we have to stop overthinking it too much.
What's interesting is that on the other side of it, I have Corbin Burnes ahead of him. I'm going to lower Corbin Burnes because what I've seen, I think the biggest argument I've seen myself give really is for Corbin Burnes to be good again based on the cutter having its old drop. It went down to like 7 inches and you want low on a cutter because that means it's just going to go down. You don't want the high that we do on a 4-seamer, right? And it was 13 or 12 really for a lot of last year. And the first 2 games I've seen from Burnes, 11 inches and 13 on that cutter. And that doesn't mean that he won't get that drop back, but there's a lot more question about it now. And it's not me saying, no, he changed the thing and it's different now. And he's totally going to hold on to it. No, he doesn't have it now. So I'm going to be moving Burnes underneath Jacob deGrom in my ranking.
How do you know that he doesn't have it? How are you getting these measurements?
Oh my God. Look at Eric Samolsky go. If you guys noticed, actually, today on Twitter and Blue Sky, we put out this massive thread of things that we have introduced in 2025 and we're going to introduce. So many apps from swing acceleration charts to Process Plus rolling charts, our Pro Dashboard, the first look at that, which is a league sync tool we're bringing for PL Pro members to have widgets with StatCast data inside of it just for your teams. And one of these apps is the spring training live data tracker that any game that has StatCast data, we have amazing data for it and all that you need. Not like all the stuff of Savant that is just like, I don't need all this. It's great. And actually today, I'm even seeing Quinn Priester's up 2 ticks for your Red Sox. So it's him versus Fitz. We'll see what happens there. But Burnes, that drop is not nearly as good in the cutter. That meant the cutter was higher up. It wasn't as effective as a pitcher. I'm going to have Corbin Burnes underneath Logan Gilbert in my rankings, I think, when I update them later this month.
Yeah, and I should just say, like, a lot of what we're going to talk about today when we talk about starting pitchers that we love from spring training, I mean, not a lot. Some of it will be influenced by what we've seen in those numbers, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to read too much into numbers. We know guys are working on things. You might see, velocity be different and movement be different. And that could be because I'm just not throwing as hard. I'm not throwing 100% right now, throwing 70%. And so my curveball is not as hard as it would be. And so that changes the movement profile on it a little bit. Obviously, we'll start to see that change as guys are going longer than like 2 innings. They're starting to stretch out a little bit. Also, I thought it was really interesting when I was at Guardians camp, Gavin Williams said to me that he's not going to throw his cutter in Arizona because of the air and the way the cutter moves in the air. He doesn't want to throw it in Arizona versus when he's throwing it in Cleveland at the beginning of the year. And on one of the last episodes of Rates and Barrels, Saris pointed out that pitchers have said the ball moves differently in the spring training games in Florida versus in Arizona because of humidity. So those are things where, like, we don't want to overemphasize, like, when we see movement profiles that are different, but also movement profiles are different because pitchers are toying with things. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to stick, but it does give us the indication that a pitcher is trying something.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, like, you may see a pitcher where it's like, hey, this slider is harder and it's tighter. And okay, also then I look on the PL Pro, the pitcher list app, and I see the strike rate on it. And you're like, okay, well, that pitch is harder and tighter and now being thrown for strikes versus last year. And so maybe that is something that will stick, right. Pablo Lopez. And so, like, those are things like that where we're not trying to, when we talk about them on this episode, we're just trying to tell you that these are things that are being worked on and things that we may like or not like. We're not saying it's 100% guaranteed that this is what that pitcher is going to be doing. But if it addresses a weakness that we have seen, I think that's something that's really interesting.
No, absolutely. And it's actually funny to mention Pablo Lopez because I noticed that he was getting all this extra horizontal movement. And I asked him, and yeah, he said, "Yeah, I've been toying with going further towards third base on the rubber." And what's actually cool is you saw in his first start, he struggled to get that sweeper away properly because he was just used to it being in the middle, right? Like
Right.
not. But I love this adjustment for him because I actually was saying, dude, man, you throw like 10% sinkers to right-handers, and when you have this is a theory of mine that I'm pretty confident in now is if you have extension, if you're 7 feet plus extension, especially with velocity, the best thing you can do as a pitcher is have two different fastballs for strikes in the zone. Not just one four-seamer, Grayson Rodriguez. You need to have a sinker or a cutter, something else to mix with it because it's just super hard for guys to tell at a higher velocity and that extension what the tunnel is shorter because of the extension, and then because it's coming in even harder, then that's how you create weak contact. That's how you make it work, and that's how you get through games quickly. And really, Zach Wheeler is this. This is the Zach Wheeler method for years.
Right.
And the thing about Pablo is that he actually has over 7 feet of extension. He throws hard. It's 95 plus now, on his four-seamer. And he actually has good command of that sinker too, but only threw like 10% of the time. And I think there is a world where he really understands how to use the sinker, how to work inside accounts, don't throw this sinker, like actually really mess with the expectations of hitters. Because now that he's getting even extra horizontal movement, he is nailing that sinker inside. He threw more of them in that last game, probably because the Twins set something up because I was just yelling at him. But
Sure.
I do believe that he will lean into it more, which should limit the volatility of Lopez, because to me, it's about home runs. It's about guys sitting on the four-seamer when the sweeper or the changeup aren't there. So I'm really excited about Pablo Lopez once again.
And
and I hope that this helps him suppress his hit per nine. That has been really the problem with him through the years. That he hasn't had that phenomenal whip.
And we should say in speaking of sinkers, one of your concerns 2 years ago with Kodai Senga was getting hitters to stop jumping all over the four-seamer, and he had the cutter, which he used to kind of like really set up a lot of his success. This year, he's adding in a sinker. So now Kodai Senga, I know, yes, he has 6 pitches, but he has different fastball variations to both lefties and righties now. Plus the ghost fork that we know.
Yeah, he threw one of them. But that one ghost fork yesterday. Yeah.
Wild. That's a trend that, again, in the article that I had with Bybee, Tanner Bybee specifically mentioned, like, and also Carl Willis, the Guardians pitch coach, were like, this is the league trend right now. It's multiple fastball variations to hitters of each handedness. I can't just rely on velocity anymore. I can't just throw this four-seamer. I have to have something else. And so you're going to see that with a lot of pitchers. And I think when you see that with a lot of pitchers, it's really good news for some of the guys who have four-seamers that get hit hard. Yeah. I wrote about Kevin Gausman when we, you and I and Eno Saris and Lance Brozdowski did a little collaboration post, which you could check out anywhere. Check it out. Nick's part on Pitcher List, and he links to all of our stuff. My part on NBC Sports, I link to all of it. But we've talked about how Gausman was essentially a one-pitch pitcher with the splitter because the four-seamer got hit really hard. He started to incorporate a sinker a little bit at the, in last year, and now he's incorporating a cutter. He's going to have 2 separate fastball variations in addition to the four-seamer. That's something that I would really like if we start to see those pitches thrown for strikes in spring. We haven't yet seen a huge sample size yet, but that, and I know that a lot of Gausman's value is going to be, can I get that split back to being as impactful as it was in like 2023? But Gausman is a guy I've moved up my rankings into like the 40s from down in the 60s. So I'm not like, hey, Kevin Gausman is a top 15 starter again. But I think Kevin Gausman with multiple fastball variations that he can throw for strikes to both righties and lefties is a safer pitcher than the Kevin Gausman we saw last year. Because if the splitter is not working as at the elite level we're used to seeing, we still have more of a solid foundation than we did prior. And so Gausman's somebody that he's falling still in drafts, and I have no problem taking him as like my SP3-4, depending on the depth of my league, because I think I'm going to get 180 innings there. The team is fine. It's not great, but I think 10, 11 wins seems solid. And I think that Gausman is a safer bet with these multiple fastball variations.
Yeah. I'm with you on that last statement that he is safer than before. I don't know how safe he is though, just because is the splitter going to die away again? Is it going to come back properly? He did it a little bit at the end there. And I think it was even you that was mentioning about how Gausman isn't this like historically elite pitcher.
Yes, 3 years of elite production.
A sinker makes sense, but I don't think it's the real solution. The solution is that you got to have another reliable secondary pitch that isn't a splitter. What do you know? More at 11. Nick Pollock says that. And I'm still a little bit out on Gausman just because there's so many guys. And I do feel that you will be stuck a little with Gausman and you won't really know if you believe it or not. I mean, if he excels out of the gate, then fine. All right. You should feel fine. But I don't think that's a high enough probability for me to do it.
So who are you in on then? Based on what you've seen so far?
What a nice segue from Eric Samolsky. I'm going to tell you two guys that I am so in on after this break. The first one you can't avoid right now. You can't avoid him, Eric. Okay? It's Max Meyer. It's just, I mean, especially in the pitcher list Discord, you can't. Because Max Meyer is throwing 2 ticks harder on his four-seamer. It actually looks like an effective four-seamer for once. But it's not even just that. It's that he has this amazing elite slider. He throws it harder now. And now it's over 90. I think it's like 91. And he has a sweeper. So he took that one slider at like 88 and then split it and said, cool, I'm going to throw like the 85 and I'm going to throw the 91. And it is so good. I'm really stoked about this. I am obviously going to wait one more game until I really do something. But it's been, I think, at least 2, not 3 now of Max Meyer showcasing this. And that's, look, it's kind of weird just looking at grids right now. I'm feeling like just looking at the numbers, click. Okay, cool. I like this guy. But sometimes it's just you have a foundation with the pitcher, and then they are demonstrably better.
Yep.
And you just go, well, okay, then you are going to be better now. It also makes it so fun to see them actually in action on opening day. And I have some huge news about opening day that I can't share publicly for like another 2 weeks. But guys, I'm telling you right now, you're going to want to spend opening day with us. That's all I can say.
I was hoping you and I might get to spend opening day together. We'll see.
If I mean, this is incredible. What
you can tell me off air.
And it's really just, I could not be more excited about this. And this is one day of like announcing all those other things. I didn't even announce this thing. I couldn't. So get ready for that. But yeah, Max Meyer to me is it's just he's showcasing things like, no, cool, I've figured it out now. Everyone was super high on Max Meyer. And then like he raised his arm angle after coming from college, and then he was much worse. And now he's back to the same lower arm angle. And it's a much better fastball, much harder. So yeah. I'm in on that. My 12-teamer at the end of the draft's like, sure, take a chance on Max Meyer. Where are you seeing him?
I will say, let's just stick with the same team. I really liked what I saw from Ryan Weathers. Ryan Weathers was a guy who was pretty good last year in his innings, and then an injury kind of derailed it. There were the stories of like, hey, best shape of his life. Like, Ryan Weathers lost 20 pounds in the offseason. And those things are important for pitchers, especially a guy like him who acknowledged that he wasn't in the shape to get through a whole season. Lance Brozdowski wrote a great piece on Ryan Weathers. And you cited it on Twitter. We've talked about Weathers a little bit. Weathers throwing harder, like 99 right now from the left side, added vertical movement on the fastball, as Lance pointed out too, and as the great PL Live spring training stats app showcased. Weathers also added some drop on the changeup, so that's created more of a movement separation. He seems to have added a harder slider, like a gyro slider. Again, I haven't seen that pitch in person, but I just like the idea of adding that harder, tighter slider for him for strikes. So Weathers is a guy who, like, I honestly think like if it's push come to shove right now, like I know we've talked about your boy Edward Cabrera a bunch. Like I might be drafting Cabrera like 4th amongst
Yeah,
Marlins pitchers.
and this is also the important part. We don't talk about this a lot, but I put out my initial ranks without spring training, and I say, cool, these are the things I'm looking for in spring training. I'm going to have them favored because I can see it working right now, and I can't predict who's going to be throwing harder, who's going to change their pitches, but I can see at least some guys that if they lean into certain things that we have seen before, that could mean the growth, right? At least I can visualize what the growth is. And with Edward Cabrera, the first game was not anything new in a bad way. And the second game, at least he was throwing more sliders, but we have not gotten to that point of Edward Cabrera really being like, cool, I'm going to throw like 30% sliders now. And until we really get that, I don't think that's going to work out. So I'm lowering him, but you're right. I mean, Ryan Weathers, you might be surprised, actually, we don't have any data publicly. Lance was able to get his hands on some, and that showcased those numbers. And amazing. I'm so excited to get confirmed. Just like, cool. It's not that I don't trust Lance. It's just, I just want to see it like right there, and I can just point at it and be like, cool, I trust this too. And I probably will come in the next one. I know there was some hype for Ryan Weathers last year, and he lost a little bit of it. He had some actual really good numbers 2 years ago as well in the spring that got worse. So there has been some history of him having a decline after the spring. That said, this is the highest peak we've seen from Ryan Weathers as far as ability goes. So I'm very curious about that. I mean, now it's Sandy, Ryan Weathers, and Max Meyer leading that charge in Miami. If only they had an offense. There might be something interesting there. But yeah, I'm really excited about Ryan Weathers as well, Eric.
Yeah, and I mean, Sandy, you talked about like you kind of were banging the drum for him. I recorded a video on NBC Sports earlier today about him. Just he looks healthy, and that's what's important. He looks like Sandy Alcantara.
Yeah,
they've said that they're not gonna have any innings restrictions on him, and so Alcantara is still going. Like I think it's pick 150 in the last 30
top 100
12 team NFBC online championship draft. So 12 team drafts, pick 150. It's around starting pitcher like 40 something. I was never an Alcantara as your ace guy, but Alcantara as your SP3 or 4, the way he's pitching right now,
the same way as Kevin Gausman.
Really good. I mean, I have him higher than Gausman for sure.
Okay.
I think I feel more confident in what I'm getting.
Sandy Alcantara, in my view.
Yeah. Oh, that's what. But you don't have to draft him as your SP2 right now.
Sure.
You can draft him as your 3 or 4.
Like I think there are like 20 guys who are SP2.
Yeah.
So you should try to aim to get a lot of those. They're really good.
I agree.
Another one that I'm really getting hyped on is Cristopher Sanchez, and I mean he was at 97. Averaged 97 in yesterday's game. Not yesterday's game, I apologize, on Sunday's game. And that's insane. He was at 94 and change last year, and that was even a bump from 92 and change the previous year. Like every single offseason, he's increasing his velocity. Even came out and said a quote that his goal is to sit 96 this year. And he sat 97 in that game. I mean, sure, it makes sense it would come down after a 2-inning stint or so throughout, of course, a full game for Sanchez. But it's not just that he's throwing 97. It's that he also is showcasing this cutter. And the cutter, to me, is one of the main reasons why he had a 9 hit per 9 last year. He needs that, as it was sinkers going to right-handers that were just like, here's a sinker over the plate. Whatever. Go do something with the sinker. Like, okay, cool. I'll just knock this into the outfield for a hit. And that 9 hit per 9, we don't have a frame of reference for that, is bad. It's bad, guys. Okay. Normally the ones that we like drafting, those SP2 types we're talking about, generally they have like a 7% walk rate and a 7 and change hit per 9. That's generally what it is. So when you have a low walk rate from Cristopher Sanchez at like 4 or 5%, but then you have a 9 hit per 9, that's why Sanchez had a 1-2-3 whip last year. But if that hit per 9 comes down, which essentially is a product of that sinker, oh my gosh, the walk rate is still really low. This cutter should be getting a lot more outs, and even throwing harder too should help diminish those hits. I mean, you could see like a 7-2 hit per 9. All of a sudden he's a 103 whip or something ridiculous because his walk rate is so low. That is awesome for a winning ball club. A guy's going to go so deep into games. He already is one of the more efficient pitchers in baseball, and should be flirting with like a 23% plus strikeout rate because the changeup is that good. Yes. Like this is fantastic. And that's such a twofold of a jump. The velocity with the new cutter. Oh, I'm so excited about it.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. I agree. I put a message in our chat. Do you read that for 1 second?
Oh yeah, I got you.
Cool.
Yeah,
I'll be super, super quick.
Now, Eric. So another guy that I really, really want to talk about is Adrian Houser. I know this is kind of nuts, but the situation with the Rangers right now is that Tylor Megill has low velocity once again on his fastball. Right, he's not doing anything that is 92, 93, 94. It's more like 90. And with John Grace on that rotation, fine. The SP5 is kind of up for grabs if Tylor Megill isn't that guy. So you have Kumar Rocker, who we were all hoping would be that guy. However, Kumar Rocker's getting rocked. He's not looking prime out of the gate. So we would normally think Jack Leiter, and that could still very much be the case. Jack Leiter is actually up a tick in velocity. He looks like he has a wider arsenal now with a sinker as well, which is a good addition for a guy that throws four seamers all the time and has his extension. Like, yes, you should be doing that. I love it. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Rangers said, you know what? We have Leiter ready to go in AAA. We're going to need him at some point, probably because of deGrom or whatever you want to say about that. Maybe Nathan Eovaldi needs some time in the IL, etc. Every team needs backup options. And the guy who has options, Jack Leiter, should stay there. While Adrian Houser, who they signed as a massive depth piece, is all of a sudden throwing 2 ticks harder. He's at 95. He's not at 92 and change or 90, 93. It's 95 right now for 2 straight games at the same velocity. And look, he's someone who can throw fastballs and sinkers effectively over the zone. Sometimes he has a really good slider in there too. I'm just seeing this as like a 15-teamer guy who no one is going to touch whatsoever. You need one more spot. Just go and get Adrian Houser and you can get wins. They have such a good defense also in Texas that will also help out those chances for him. I think that Adrian Houser is one of those ridiculous, like no one will talk about him sleepers for the Rangers. And, you know, Eric would mention this, but you have Richard Fitz as well. We have Quinn Priester going harder right now, but Richard Fitz has just been the talk of everything. Like, out of nowhere, going from 94.5 last year to 97.6. And what? I mean, Richard Fitz with a situation to easily grab that number 5 spot because you have Brian Bayo who's delayed. You have Cutter Crawford who's delayed. All of a sudden, we're talking about 6-man rotations. This is my whole thing. Lord of the Rings. Yeah, it's the Fellowship of the Ring. It starts off with grand ambitions and lots of men, and then eventually ends up with 2 dudes barely surviving. That's a 6-man rotation. And we haven't even gone like a week. We're already lost 2 of those from 6 to 4 that Richard Fitz could take that rotation spot. I think they should. I mean, as long as that's 6 for Richard Fitz, that's such a legitimate profile that he has that I would just ensure I would have him in 12 teamers across the board. Another one I've been talking about is Noah Cameron, who with the Royals likely isn't going to start out of the gate. Prospect was in AAA last year, throwing about 92. And the thing about Cameron was that he has an amazing changeup. It goes down and away constantly to right-handers. The command of it is really good, as his big curveball as well. Sometimes throws these cutters too that we like, but it's at 92. And I remember writing him up for the Royals saying that Cameron needs to do something different. Like he needs to add another element in order to actually take a step. Well, throwing 95 and 94 in his last 2 games in the spring, that will do it. Now, seeing 94 in the most recent one, little unfortunate. It might be a product of the spring trying to prove himself, and it might not be something that sticks throughout the season. So once he goes to AAA, are we going to see him at 93 and change, 94? But with the Royals, it's Michael Lorenzen as the number 4 and Chris Povich as the number 5. Chris Povich so far is stuck at 93 miles per hour, which we'd like to see. Not over a full game, but you know. But with Lorenzen, like how long is it going to actually last with Lorenzen? Of course, any other injury. And you look at the rest of the Royals, well, there really isn't much competition. It's like Daniel Lynch, who they don't really want to start. Alec Marsh is already behind. So Noah Cameron, I think, is going to be a call-up for the Royals relatively soon into the season. And keep an eye on him. absolutely, especially for your 15 teamers. 12 teamers, you might want to wait a start to see if the velocity is there at 94 plus, but he's someone that's certainly stuck out for me. And Eric, you've returned. People know. Don't worry. You had to step out
That's
for a
okay.
second. I vamped. I know. I could have just done it anyway, but here's Eric.
I'm sure you did
Noah
a great
Cameron,
job.
Richard Fitz are the guys that I just talked about.
Yeah, Fitz is, I mean, interesting. You mentioned the Bayo delay too. Yeah, so all of that is really interesting. Fitz, and listen, that's like, when you trade disgruntled players, like when the Red Sox got rid of Alex Verdugo, and you could maybe get somebody like Richard Fitz and some other interesting prospects in there. A similar situation to the Royals, I find, is the Giants. In the sense that, like, yes, we kind of know what the Giants rotation is at the start of the regular season. However, there are some guys in there where it's like, even not accounting for, like, we don't know what we're going to get from Justin Verlander and Robbie Ray in terms of health or whatever, but Jordan Hicks, like, yeah, he was fine as a starter. He tailed off at the end of the year. Like, can he really make it through the whole season as a starter? Kyle Harrison is somebody you and I have always been a little bit lower on than the consensus. I did write about Kyle Harrison and his new cutter for our Pitch Mix article, and that could be really good. Like, it could actually be a meaningful difference for him. But also, like, Landon Roop is somebody who I know Eno wrote about glowingly last year and kind of like put me onto him in a sense. And then Roop has, like, made a few really interesting changes this year. He has changed his change up into kind of like a little bit of a kick change, which was something that we saw in the first outing. He's added a cutter, which he's throwing primarily to lefties again as like another fastball variation.
Right.
And so I'm just kind of like, I kind of thought that he was better than, like, Kyle Harrison, Hayden Birdsong, all of them, like, at the end of last year, or I was like more intrigued by him, like what he could be. I kind of like the changes. Listen, a 3.58 ERA in 50 innings last year, 5 scoreless innings with 8 strikeouts in the spring. Just the way he looks, like, I think he's rounding out that arsenal. I don't think he's going to break camp in the rotation, but he has just kind of jumped onto my radar now as somebody where, like, I think I like what he's doing, and if he were to get a shot, I would be picking him up in most formats just to, like, see. Like, he might not be a guy where, like, hey, he's in the rotation, I'm going to grab him my 12-teamer and start him right away.
Right.
But he might be hey, he's getting a shot in the rotation, I'm going to pick him up in my 12-teamer. I'm going to have him on my bench, because this could be a situation where if things break right in that ballpark, we could be getting like a really solid starting pitcher.
I thought you were going to talk about 2 other guys in the Giants. Robbie Ray should be drafted like into the top 20 pitchers.
Yes.
I mean, it's where I'm leaning right now, because he has a changeup now, and it stinks I don't have hard data on it, but I watched the game. He had 3 innings of 6 strikeouts and looked dominant. And even though it's a terrible lefty camera angle, that is, it's far on the right side, and you can't really tell. Everything looks like has massive horizontal movement. I think he was throwing those changeups to right-handers down and away, and it looked so good. This looks like a normal changeup for a lefty, and wait a second, Ray has never had that. Oh my gosh, that's a huge deal for someone I already thought was going underdrafted in the first place, because he's a 25 to 30% strikeout rate guy who pretty much has been the same for like 3 years, and he got Tommy John, and we were rating him inside the top 30 easily in that time. Yeah, I love Robbie Ray this year. And I also am very intrigued all of a sudden by Hayden Birdsong. I haven't got any data on it, but he hasn't walked a batter yet.
Yeah, that's
made a really good point.
Crucial.
I agree with him that you watch Hayden Birdsong and his horrifically bad 4-seamer command at times, and you go, this does not look like a dude who should be missing this much. Like, mechanically speaking, Birdsong is actually looks good as far as going straight to the catcher and not being ultra violent, not being super quick or inconsistent. And it feels as if he's just like one simple thing away from, oh, cool, I can find the zone now.
Right.
And maybe he did that. We literally just haven't gotten any data to confirm this. So Birdsong, we obviously know the upside of this. Like his curveball and slider both have shown ridiculous ability. The fastball itself as a shape pitch, not actually that amazing, but it got a lot of whiffs last year per swing. And yeah, I would think that Birdsong might demand the Giants to do something quick early in the season. So I've certainly peaked. I've certainly become more interested in Birdsong than I ever thought I would be at this time. And with Rupp, I kind of see like a Brady Singer a little bit. It's like fastball slider or whatever breaking ball that is. And I hope that there's more with the changeup.
Yeah.
With Rupp, as you were describing. So that's, I think, that made the focus for me. Otherwise, it's kind of like a worse Brady Singer, who, by the way, Brady Singer, he's trying things. This is a new Brady Singer.
I wonder if like pitchers, when they sign with the Reds or something, they sign in an offensive environment, they're more inclined to try things, right?
Mm-hmm.
He has a massive park downgrade from Kauffman Stadium to Great American Ballpark, and I wonder if as a pitcher that makes you go, okay, maybe I'll try. Maybe I don't have the margin for error that I did, so I'm going to experiment with some things that maybe could, I don't know, help me out in some way. Let's add on to the Robbie Ray thing with Jesus Luzardo, who is another guy coming off of multiple injuries, who the velocity looks good. There's a little more run on his fastball, which I like. The changeup has looked really good early on. And I think this is just one thing where you're like, okay, if I'm getting Luzardo sitting 97 like he was in spring, and again, we have to see that as he goes longer in his outings, how the velocity hangs around. But if I'm getting Jesus Luzardo in the upper 90s with that changeup looking like the changeup that we saw when he was like running really good, I'm in on him with the Phillies. And again, like being in on Luzardo isn't drafting him where Robbie Ray is being drafted or would be drafted, right?
Right.
Luzardo is not going as a top 30 starting pitcher, and he won't. Like I don't think there's anything Luzardo could do this spring that will have him being drafted that high. But like right now, he's going in like the 50s, starting like around starting pitcher 50 something. And like
I'm so in.
I'm gonna take Luzardo because he looks healthy, and I think that he is making changes to help mitigate that contact against righties. And so that's just another guy with health that has stood out to me. I think health is really important. At this point in time too.
Sinkers to lefties for Luzardo. That's not a thing he's normally done. And actually, when I did my report of the Marlins before he even got traded, it was twofold. Of one, you should be throwing your four-seamer, which has actually more expected horizontal movement inside to lefties. You got to throw this thing inside of lefties. You're not doing that, and you're essentially leaving profit on the table. And so here he is with a sinker, even leaning more heavily into it, spotting it inside of lefties in that game. That's some good stuff. And then you got against righties. One of the bigger problems was the slider being utilized a little too much, and it's a very dangerous pitch to throw the slider, big breaking ball opposite handed, because you have to get it underneath that nitro zone, right? You can't leave it in the zone down and in. You have to get underneath it, and then it becomes so tempting. And Luzardo made a lot of mistakes in the middle of the zone with that pitch last year, and it got destroyed. The thing is, his changeup is insanely good against righties, and I don't really understand why he's allowing himself to put himself in a position that he could get beat by the slider instead of just going with the changeup. And what did he do? And 4 out of 5 whiffs on his changeup to right-handers in that game. And I'm like, yeah, cool. So those are the two things I was like, hey, just do those. You don't need to have like up 1 to 2 ticks and up 2 to 3 ticks on the slider and changeup too. Like you don't need that. Just do those tweaks, and he's doing those tweaks and more. So that's a great call with Luzardo. I'm so very much in on that one. And Eric, I'm actually really curious. I think there's someone you haven't mentioned who might be a big sleeper for you this year. We're going to talk about him after this break.
So Can you give me a hint?
Give you a hint?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
I mean, there's put out so much content. I'm not. Is it Kevin Williams? We've talked about him a bunch.
I know it is not.
Okay.
No, actually, I'll be completely honest. We're gonna restart this, but no, I
Okay.
figured you just had somebody. I was just setting you up.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought you were talking about somebody. Okay. Yeah,
I was like, I figured you had somebody. Just you're gonna do. Okay.
I have people ready to go. Yeah, I'm ready to.
Well, I mean,
ready to go.
I can. Okay, here we go.
No, I got it.
So Eric, who we got? Who is the sleeper that you just have to tell everyone about?
Well, I got to tell you, it's not somebody that I have to tell everybody about, but it is somebody that popped into my mind as you were talking about Jesus Luzardo, lefty, increased changeup usage, better changeup. Because I got to tell you, another pitcher that I wasn't sure I was going to be in on. But I liked the changeup that I saw from Cade Povich the other day.
Oh,
3 scoreless innings, 6 strikeouts. That changeup looked so much better than it looked in his MLB debut last year. We talked about how he was kind of a guy with no great pitch. Like, yes, he had 5 or 6 pitches, but you were kind of like, okay, but which one of them are really good?
right.
If that changeup looks as good as it did in those spring starts, and we have to see it carry over, like we've talked about, lefties with good changeups in this league are really great for neutralizing right-handed hitters. And I look at that Orioles rotation and it is not good. Like, yes, I think that Povich is probably on the outside looking in because of Tomoyuki Sagano. Like, the Orioles signed him to be in the rotation.
Yeah.
Charlie Morton, Dean Kramer, like those guys are probably going to start the year in the rotation. But like, if Povich is taking his game to another level, and if Povich is able to throw that changeup the way he did, if he has decent velocity, like I think he's going to get another shot. And I'm way more intrigued by him if this changeup growth sticks than I would have been last year.
Oh, that's a cool one.
Rogers is sidelined by the knee injury. Chase McDermott is sidelined with a strained lat. We know Bradish isn't coming back from Tommy John surgery until like maybe the very end of the year. So I just don't, there's nobody competing for the SP6 role with Cade Povich. Like that is him.
Right.
Like, I guess it's
Albert
Justin
Suarez?
Armbruster, who's not on the 40-man roster. Ronzi Contreras, who's been
so Suarez is hurt with a knee. Is that right?
Yes. So Suarez is
completely
down, but I think also Suarez is somebody who they have shown that they'll pitch out of the bullpen. Suarez does have no minor league options, so he has to make the roster. And that makes me think Suarez starts the year out of the bullpen because I think that Tomoyuki Sagano is there for the starting rotation.
I mean, it might be a case where he can piggyback some starts though with Sagano to make it easier for him. So you might see like 3 innings from Suarez or something like that.
So So yes, I guess Suarez and Povich are competing for the 6th starter spot.
Okay.
But this is a rotation with no lefties, 0 lefties.
Man, it's almost like they should have signed Max Fried.
It's great. It's crazy. That would have been a great idea.
Nuts. Oh gosh. What are the Orioles thinking? Is there an article out there talking about how the GM refuses to spend the money that the owner says go spend? I don't know. Might be able to find it on Pitcher List. I don't know.
I think you could find that article.
It's crazy. One team I do want to talk about are the Tigers really quickly.
Okay.
Because obviously I've said, hey, Sawyer Gipson-Long is actually a major sleeper to me. I think he is. I think a lot of people overlook the impact of Tommy John guys coming back. We've seen in the past. I mean, even Robbie Ray last year made an impact. Springs was before he got hurt again. But we've seen, Cole Reagans show up, a really Tarek Skubal, for example, in 2023. I think that Sawyer Gipson-Long and Yuri Perez both, when they do return, are going to be instant fantasy ads. And if you have IL spots, you got to be disciplined to know, hey, treat this like a prospect stash once you have the IL filled up, and you might not want to do that. But there's no harm in doing it now at the very end of your draft. And I would definitely be doing that with Sawyer Gipson-Long. Reese Olson's throwing harder. I hope that sticks. I don't know if it pushes him over the edge of actually having a good fastball now. At least a 4-seamer. Sinker does help. And he still needs to get his changeup consistent. But that is certainly something to monitor. Casey Mize is also up a little bit. I don't know if that's going to stick around.
And the splitter is up for Mize, which I like. The harder splitter I think is more beneficial for Mize.
I'm not seeing anything else though from Mize, and that's still a concern for me. In that, you
mentioned that on the episode of The Craft, which is a great listen for the Central Division streamers, or sleepers. Everybody should check that out. But Eno wrote about Mize, the multiple sliders he's trying to utilize, which, as you mentioned, great in theory. In practice right now,
yeah, it's just
we're
not
not seeing
quite
a lot.
it. And there are two others though. There's obviously Jackson Jobe, who, I'll be frank with you, like he should get that spot. He's just too good. That 2-plane breaker is insane. They don't want to call it a curve. They don't want to call it a sweeper. Like it has the same amount of sweep as a sweeper, but also the same amount of depth of a curveball. Like what? You're not allowed to have both. You can't do that. Oh yeah, and also throws 98. I mean, it's crazy. And he also has a cutter that grades out as like one of the highest PLV pitches or something stupid at 91 miles per hour. Like this is a stud, and he should be the SB5, and I'm going to be drafting him. I'm keeping him exactly where he is in my rankings right now because you still don't fully know. But there is a wrinkle in here, and that's Kider Montero.
Oh, and it's not the K first name that I thought you were going to go with.
He's at 96 now. And Kider Montero last year, no, Kenta Maeda, he's a tick down. He's now back to like 91.8. I'm like, yeah, it's fine.
Yes, I will say Evan Petzold, who covers the Tigers for like the free Detroit Free Press or whatever, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, that's right.
He had a great tweet out today where like, Kenta Maeda threw 4 scoreless today with 5 strikeouts, and that's great. He was 92 with the fastball in the first 3 innings. He threw 4 fastballs in the 4th inning. 90.8, 90.6, 90.3, 90.5. Yeah. So basically, after the 3rd inning, Kenta Maeda fell down to 90 miles an hour with the 4-seam fastball.
Right.
That is not what you're looking for as he continues to get stretched out. Whether they give him a crack or not to start the year, like I might have, seems like somebody who's best in like 2 to 3 inning spurts out of the bullpen at this stage of his career.
I think that's going to be it. With Montero, though, he showcased that he was good enough for the Tigers last year and throwing essentially 2 ticks harder, or a tick and a half harder. That's kind of interesting at 96. With a little bit better of an all-around arsenal, I started to find myself being like, wait, hold on a second. You actually have like a legitimate 4-seamer now. The shape of it improved as well. And that's kind of cool. The Tigers could be very encouraged to be like, oh no, we have this guy that we like, and he already is stretched out and like has done this in Kider Montero. So don't be too shocked if Montero hold on to this and actually showcases that he's well deserving of that roster spot, because he is looking like a different guy as of right now. Are there any other ones that you've been disappointed by? I'll start off by saying Andre Palante with the Cardinals is down 2 ticks again today, and worse movement on his 4-seamer. And keep in mind that 4-seamer was a cut fastball that you can kind of just think of it as a cutter. Like it's like first percentile in horizontal and vertical break on a 4-seamer. It's like that's because it's a cutter, and it's has less movement and also less velocity, which is just like, what? Something's wrong,
right?
And the real note for that is, well, he is supposed to be their number 5 or like their number 4, right? You have Masses or 5 if you want to say that. So the Cardinals have Michael McGreevy, who's likely the one who steps in as the number 6. Don't really love him. I think he's an interesting command guy, whatever, but not anything to write home about. But then after that, it's Quinn Matthews.
Yeah.
And I'm in on Quinn Matthews.
Yeah, I will say, like, I think everybody is saying that Matthew Liberatore is starting the year in the bullpen because he was a reliever for a lot of last year, but they've been using him in spurts like a starter. Like he's thrown like 3 innings at a time. He has not allowed a hit at all this spring and has retired 21 of the 22 batters he's faced, and is adding in a cutter and
is a tick harder
and is somebody who was like a legitimate prospect coming up,
right?
And so now you're like, huh? Do they give him a shot? Because this is the season for the Cardinals where you're like, why not? What is the downside, right? Like
the Cardinals, that's why
we are rebuilding. Like
they are like
if Matthew Liberatore looks
representation
looks that good,
corporate loyalty.
Yeah. Sure.
Just like the old guys are like, he's been here a while. He's gonna see it out. I don't care if it's what. He's gonna see it out.
We should see it out with him a little bit. Like, I'm curious. I just don't know that it's a given that he's in the bullpen if other options are not.
That's such a good call, Eric.
Are not kind of like performing up to expectation. So that's a name I'm looking at. We know it's not going to be Quinn Matthews to start the year because he already got sent to minor league camp.
Absolutely.
You and I are both very much in on Quinn Matthews. So I think when he gets a shot, like I'm invested. I just think McGreevy and maybe Liberatore get shots beforehand. I will say, just you mentioned Palante. I want to just call out in the same game. It's Tylor Megill was pitching today against Palante. You and I have, been in on Megill at cost based on just like, where he was being totally undrafted. He's a guy who's probably starting the year in the rotation, given the injuries to Minaya and Frankie Montes. He has added the cutter last year, which we knew was a component at the end of the year and we liked. He's added the sinker as more of a focus on the arsenal this year. 72% strike rate on the sinker today. 14 sinkers was his second most used pitch. That's really good. 5 called strikes on it. Like, we need him to have fastballs that he can pound the zone with, because the 4-seam fastball was not that. But the 4-seam fastball at 96, with 16 inches of IVB, can play up if it's a 2-strike offering. If I can throw other fastballs 4 strikes and then throw the 4-seamer. And I also just noticed, like, he really reshaped that curveball. It's early days, so we don't know what we're going to get from it, but that curveball's up over 4 miles an hour. We've talked about how it has kind of like shrunken when you throw breaking balls harder, it shrinks the movement profile of it a little bit, right? It causes it to move less because it's coming in harder. That theoretically could make it easier for him to command the pitch because he has less movement to worry about, like making sure it doesn't fall out of the zone low. We have liked the slider for him in the past. He hasn't used the American spork, or he didn't use it today, but like, we know he's playing around with things, but the cutter was a really good pitch for him. And I think a cutter and a sinker as bigger parts of his arsenal make me intrigued by Tylor Megill, where, like, you have always preached this idea of late round picks being guys who, like, you can make a decision on early. And I like taking a flyer at the end of drafts on Megill because he's going to be in the rotation to start the year. If there's no improvement to the command, then you're just like, all right, it's the same dude, and I'm done. But I have moved Megill up. Like, he's still basically like around 100 for me. I think he was like 98 or 97. So it's not like he's really high in my rankings, but I moved him from a guy I'm watching to a guy that I'm happy to just say, why not? In one of my final picks, and just see how it goes.
Man. So Tylor Megill, or formerly known as Tylor Megill. This should be so good. And look, he's throwing 96 today, 7.2 feet of extension elite, 1.4 height adjusted VAA. So that's flat. With that extension and that velocity, should absolutely destroy upstairs. Shaq's just like completely killed him. He has like 2 fastballs above the middle height. And even one of them is like half middle, half high. He has like one legitimately high fastball thrown today. And that just destroys me, because it's like, I've been waiting for Tylor Megill to really turn into like a harder throwing Bailey Ober almost. Or really harder throwing Joe Ryan, kind of. And no, Bailey Ober's much better. And he just can't locate the 4-seamer upstairs at all. And even the sinker location to right-handers today was middle.
It's down the middle.
And
it's right down the middle.
He's so close. He doesn't need the nastiest of nasty stuff. Love what you're talking about with the curveball going up to 82. Yep, that's all you need. Sure, great. Throw the cutter down away if you can, but like, he's not that command guy. And I love the strike rate, but in that 1.4 height adjusted VA, it was 1.1 last year. That's a flatter 4-seamer. Like, it's even better, and you just can't do it. It drives me up the wall.
Yeah.
So I hope he can. But
Let me ask you about another fringe. Is he in the rotation? Is he not kind of guy?
Yeah, please.
I have enjoyed the changes that Jack Leiter has made this spring. I know that.
Oh, I talked about Jack Leiter when you were gone for a second. Adrian
did?
Houser is the one
Yes.
that is up 2 ticks and is, I think, could take Tylor Megill's spot.
So that was my question, is about
yeah.
Rocker or Leiter. And Rocker, whatever.
Rocker's getting rocked, haha, but he
Yes.
is, and Leiter's looking way better. And I'm now like kind of shifting more to Leiter
yes.
than I am Rocker at the moment.
And
yeah,
I think, like, listen, I know some people who work in baseball, and I just know that there are some people who are of the mind that Jack Leiter made real improvements in AAA last year, and his AAA numbers were pretty good, and he wasn't able to carry that over to the big leagues. But if he's doing, and he's looked pretty good this spring, and there just comes a time where a guy needs to get a chance to pitch regularly against major league hitters to see if he can get
Jack
major
Leiter
league
could
hitters
easily
out.
be that. I mean, his four-seamer,
whether that's Jack Leiter making, I just say whether it's Jack Leiter making the team as like a bullpen guy, like as a long relief guy, or making the team as a fifth starter. Like, it's a little bit of like a Reagan's situation where like Texas didn't really have room for him, but they needed him to throw against big league pitching because he had just proven that he could throw against big league pitching. And in 23, they had to use him out of the bullpen, probably more than they wanted early on. And then they were making a run at the World Series and decided that he was better off, that they decided to trade him. And I know that like the many people within the Rangers front office have said after the fact, like they really liked Cole Reagans. They wanted a bullpen arm to try to win the World Series. They thought Chapman would help them win the World Series.
Well, that happened.
And they did. But like, they felt like Reagan's needed opportunities against big league pitchers. And that might be the case for Jack Leiter here. I'm not saying Jack Leiter is the next Cole Reagans, but I'm just saying, like, I think Leiter may get an opportunity sooner than we necessarily think.
Yeah, no, I would love that. Sorry to interrupt you before. Jack Leiter, we have this amazing app for four-seamers. It's called the Four-Seamer Live app. It's what we had last year. We're actually making it much better for all pitch types and everything this year. But essentially, it would take the Fan 4, that is the Fantastic Four of velocity and extension and IVB and height adjusted VA, shove them together to create a really good expected whiff rate. And we have this also for AAA. So I'd be able to see four-seamers in AAA, which I think is actually the most important pitch to follow. I think a lot of people would agree with that in the minors, to really see, like, cool, if you have an overwhelming fastball, it's just a lot easier than just a really good slider. And Jack Leiter would just blow up this leaderboard every single time he started. And I just like see the AAA ones. I'm like, oh yeah, Jack Leiter 136 plus or whatever. Yeah. And like everyone else is like 102, because his is just like amazing extension, amazing vert, amazing, the whole thing. So it makes sense to me. It's just really about, as you mentioned, getting the reps so that he can throw the slider for strikes. Is the new sinker going to be the extra strike pitch he needs, or is he developing that cutter and everything else that he needs, right? Like, I can see that happening. It's just a question of when, really.
He's another harder changeup guy, too.
Absolutely.
I don't know if it's a kick change or not.
But. To end this one, I'm going to ask about not Tristan McKenzie. He's just throwing max effort and like is not going to stick at 3.4 miles per hour faster. 94.5, not going to stick. Joe Boyle, 103 was his average. 2.6 ticks up. And when he was traded from the Athletics to the Rays, we all said, oh, the Rays are going to fix him. And I'm like, you can't fix ridiculous volatility, but maybe they have. Do you think that Joe Boyle is going to be a thing this year, Eric?
I do, but I think it'll be as a reliever.
Okay.
But I do think Joe Boyle will be a thing this year. For the Rays out of the bullpen. I just think, like, I look at, I think Fairbanks I don't know that he lasts the whole year in Tampa. We just know how they handle bullpen assets, right? They're gonna trade you at your max value, and they're gonna get the next Edwin Uceta or Robert Stevenson or all these other guys. And so I think that Boyle's gonna get a shot. I think he profiles as more of a reliever. I think we had said that previously. And so, yes, I think that he is going to be a thing out of the bullpen for the Rays. I don't know if that thing is closing. We'll see. I mean, they have, they could use Uceta, they could use Manuel Rodriguez, guys like that. I want to throw it to you for one final pitcher, because I know that sometimes when we talk about guys who are rising in the spring or guys who are, jumping into the conversation, we're looking for like the next like big breakout guy, right?
Of course.
Who is going to jump in and have this huge year. But sometimes it's just, who is somebody we totally ignored who actually probably has a full-time role and is a starter that we have totally forgotten about. And there's somebody in the NL East that you and I have talked about on a team that plays in Washington who is going to start this year because he was signed in the offseason to start.
Yeah.
And nobody's talking about him, and his velocity is also up this year.
It's up to 94.5 or so.
Yeah. Who are we talking about?
We're talking about Michael Soroka.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. At first, I thought you were talking about Merrill Kelly, who's the guy that like, oh, cool, I'm in a 15-teamer. Yeah, I'll be really happy to get Merrill Kelly's up in velocity a little bit, and like that's a good defense, and there's a good, wonderful volume. 12-teamers, I'm like, yeah, whatever. But Michael Soroka, I hope that's real. I mean, it looks like he changed his arm angle a little bit. He's a command guy. He was before. Like, think of him as almost a Brady Singer type now, really. Like 4-seamer, sinker, slider. And maybe there's a little bit more with the changeup coming back with Michael Soroka. But what I do like about him is he's always been like a veteran. Even when Soroka first came up, he was like 21 years old, and we were just impressed at like how he would manipulate the ball and utilize all the corners of the zone. And we don't normally see that from a young guy. And then, of course, his legacy has been just injury after injury and never really getting back into a rhythm. So, yeah, there is certainly sneaky value to be had. And it does mean that DJ Hers, who just walked 4 batters in a game, might not be on that opening day rotation, because he has options, and they are running out of space. Ogasawara is also there with Soroka. You have Trevor Williams and Mackenzie Gore and Jake Irvin. Where does DJ Hers fit in here? It's kind of wild to say that, but I think that might be the case. So I'm not interested in a 12-teamer, but like Soroka made 15. There's a good dart throw. Why not?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's like deeper leagues only, but he's on the radar now in ways that we have forgotten about. And I just, for people that are out there playing in all different league types, I know we're chasing like what is happening this spring that's going to unlock this guy and make him like, a league winner, like all these terms that we hear all the time.
Right.
But sometimes, especially if you're in deep leagues, it is just like
3.75 ERA. Who's going to do it at 118?
Yeah, like who's just going to provide value that we have forgotten
absolutely
about. And so Eric,
I think that's going to do it.
I think that's going to do it. That is going to do it. We've covered a lot of guys. We're going to continue through spring training to go through these kind of like risers and fallers, and maybe we'll play around with like our favorite picks in certain ranges and things like that as we get through. If there's something you would love Nick and I to discuss, feel free to reach us on Twitter or on Blue Sky. We're on both of those platforms. So check that out. Check out our content coming out over on Pitcher List for Nick, on NBC Sports for me. Check out Nick on the Craft still. And you're still doing the first pitch, the PL.
Oh yeah, I got to record actually. Today's after this, so
yes,
don't worry guys, it's coming out.
The Pitcher List channel is full. And we'll wait for 2 weeks to figure out what's happening on opening day. We're waiting with bated breath.
Oh my gosh, guys, seriously, I'm so excited for everybody, especially you guys watching on YouTube right now. You're gonna love this. But Eric, it's good to see you back home.
You too. I'm excited to be back in the grind, talking baseball. I am Eric Smolsky, the Pelican.
I'm Nick Pollock, the Lion.
And I'm going to go sell this PL Pro Inside information to the highest bidder in a second.